Oriana, Book 1 of the Disunity Trilogy by Kitz, Chapter 7. Gemma's communicator beeped as she left Inoa's quarters. The ship had left Izanagi just the day before. She tapped the communicator on her wrist. "Dr. Fiore," she said. "Doctor, it's Lieutenant Darren. If you're not busy, could you come by Docking Bay 12, please, ma'am? We could use your expertise here." "I'm on my way." His voice had been calm, so she walked briskly, but didn't rush to the docking bays that ran along the exterior of the ship. When she arrived, she was stopped by a pair of Marines standing guard at the door. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This bay is off limits." "Lieutenant Darren requested my assistance." The Marines didn't move out of the way. She tapped the communicator on her wrist and hailed the lieutenant. "Lieutenant, Dr. Fiore here. Would you please come out and instruct the Marines to allow me to enter?" "Yes, ma'am. I'll be right there." The door slid open, and an odor like nothing she had smelled before wafted over her. Her first instinct was to cover her nose and mouth, but she resisted so she could try to determine what it was. Lieutenant Darren, a man of average height and build, waved her inside past the Marines. The bay was mostly taken up by an enemy fighter craft. The insect-like vehicle was partially dismantled, and techs were crawling over its bulk with various tools. A medical table stood apart to the left. A motionless man in a flight suit of some kind was held down with restraints. The flight suit was made of black glossy material and metallic pieces. Even from the door, she could see that part of the suit had burned away. What's going on here? The room went silent. Gemma walked over to the medical bed. She looked around at the engineers and mechanics standing nearby. The man on the bed seemed to be unconscious, though it was hard to tell with the helmet still on his head. His flight suit was burned away in spots, revealing flesh beneath. On his arms, a glint of metal was also visible through the damaged suit. "Lieutenant, why is this man in a docking bay instead of my infirmary? Have you had him since the battle?" Lieutenant Darren squared his shoulders. "It was the captain's orders, ma'am. He wanted knowledge of the prisoner kept to a minimum." "I'll speak to the captain. This is an atrocity. I'm having him transported to the infirmary immediately." She tapped the communicator on her wrist. "Angela, set up the quarantine room and prepare to receive a critical patient. We have burn wounds, possibly chemical wounds. Prepare for fluids. The patient is likely dehydrated and malnourished." "Yes, ma'am," came the response. She pointed to the two people nearest to her. "You two, bring the patient and follow me." The techs she had chosen maneuvered the bed into the hallway. The conversation in the room resumed even louder than when Gemma had first arrived. One of the Marines tapped his comm after they passed. "Inform the captain that the POW has been taken into custody by Dr. Fiore," he said. Gemma didn't hear the response. When they arrived at the infirmary, she directed the techs to take the bed straight to the back. She stopped them at the first glass-doored room where they were met by nurses and another doctor, all dressed head to toe in white quarantine suits. Gemma's staff took the bed from the techs, who looked relieved to be dismissed from their conscripted duty. Gemma pulled the head nurse to the side. "Angela, let's get him out of that flight suit and helmet if possible. There's something odd about his arms as well. Keep him restrained just in case, but you can remove the restraints one at a time if needed to remove the flight suit." "Yes, ma'am." Gemma went to her office and sat behind her desk. She pulled the keyboard over and keyed in orders to Lieutenant Darren for him and all the crewmen involved with the POW to come in for an examination before the end of their shift. Then she sent a message to Captain Caruso requesting a meeting in her office at his earliest convenience. When Gemma arrived in the quarantine room, the prisoner had been moved to the bed and the suit had been cut away, revealing a strange mix of scored flesh and blackened metal. His helmet had not been removed. It was now possible to see that his arms had been enhanced with metal replacing flesh in places and wires poked out from places where the flesh was badly burned. "Why is his helmet still on?" Her voice sounded muffled through her cloth mask. Dr. Simon came around the bed. It's attached. We're going to need additional tools to remove it, and I'm not sure what that will do to him. Gemma moved the man's head and examined the helmet more closely. She ran her gloved hands over its surface and found the joining of the mask piece to the cowl. She crouched to get a better look. There wasn't an obvious mechanism for the two pieces to be connected. She stood up and turned to her staff. Continue treating the injuries you can get to. I'm going to have Lieutenant Darren come have a look at this with me. When Lieutenant Darren joined them in the infirmary a short time later, she directed him to don the appropriate quarantine garb, sterilize his tools, then led him into the room with the POW. The nurses were carefully cleaning and treating the burns, which made the machinery attached to his arms more clearly visible. The metal covered most of his upper and lower arms, his hands, and his fingers. Wires were visible where the remaining skin had burnt. An IV had been run through his leg since the burns were less severe and there would be no interference with the mechanical enhancements. Gemma gestured at the helmet. This helmet is attached in a way that is unfamiliar to me. Did your people make any progress finding out how it's connected? We had some ideas, but every time we tried to remove it, his breathing became really labored, so we stopped trying. I was concerned if we didn't get it removed soon that he'd starve. That's why I disobeyed orders and called for your assistance. You did the right thing, Lieutenant. I just wish you had done it sooner. I was following orders from the captain. I could face disciplinary action for this. I'll be talking to the captain. You don't have to worry about that. There are rules to follow when the enemy is captured. She turned to the medical team. Let's be as prepared as we can be for him to arrest. Get some sensors on him. I want constant vitals. Get oxygen ready to put on him as soon as that thing comes off. The team moved quickly to follow her directions before she even finished speaking. As soon as they were ready, Gemma turned back to Lieutenant Darren. Your turn, Lieutenant. Get that mask off as quickly as you can. He laid out the tools on a small stand next to the POW's head. Can we lift the bed a little higher? He asked. Sure. Gemma nodded at a nurse that was near the bed's controls. The bed rose slowly several inches. Lieutenant Darren leaned over to see along the joining of the mask and the cowl. He began working at it with one after another of the tools he had brought, going around the mask to loosen its connection. The clicking of his tools was audible in the quiet of the room. The prisoner's breathing did become more labored as the mask began to come free, but Gemma was watching the displays and gestured for Darren to continue removing it. When it did come free, Gemma stepped in and lifted it slowly away. The lieutenant leaned down to make sure nothing was connected, and she moved it to a tray next to the bed. Wires stuck out from the man's face like strange electronic whiskers. Connectors on his forehead matched up with connectors on the inside of the mask. Screens inside of the mask matched up with his eyes. He's so young, one of the nurses said softly. His chin and cheeks were smooth. His jawline had the soft curve of a young man still growing. Let's get a genetic test and a full set of blood work, Gemma said. She turned to Lieutenant Darren. Good work, Lieutenant. Now, let's look at the cowl. She moved to the other side of the bed, and they both started examining the cowl. Lieutenant Darren lifted a tool to start working on it, but Gemma reached over to stop him. We can't remove it. She ran a hand over the young man's forehead and over the top of the cowl. The back of his skull was removed to make room for this. It's flush with the bone. Do we even have the ability to do that? Lieutenant Darren asked. Well, technically, yes. We're capable of doing this, at least the cowl part. But this is more extensive than anything that has been done. What do you make of his arms? Lieutenant Darren moved to examine the near arm. This is some pretty advanced robotics. I haven't seen anything like it. Our tests on the fighter's metal have shown that it's an unknown alloy. I'd need some samples of this, but I'm guessing it's the same stuff. Do you think he'll live? He'll live. I just don't know what kind of life he'll have. Her wrist comm vibrated, so she lifted her arm and tapped it. Dr. Fiore. Ma'am, the captain is up here to see you. The voices of one of the nurses came through. On my way. She turned back to Lieutenant Darren. You're dismissed, but I still want you and all of the others that have been working on that alien tech to come in for an exam today. No exceptions. In fact, you might as well see one of the nurses now before you return. Yes, ma'am. Gemma found the captain trying to pace in her small office. His large frame took up most of the space. "You're sending for me now?" he said when she entered. "Yes, sir. In this case, I felt it appropriate and necessary." She started removing her quarantine gear. "Do we have some kind of infection going on?" "Let's hope not. This was a precaution for dealing with an unknown." She sat down behind her desk, and the captain took a seat across from her. "Sir, I'm deeply concerned that we had an injured POW in a docking bay being treated like captured equipment. He was in a terrible state and should have had medical treatment immediately. It's a wonder that he's still alive." The captain steepled his fingers and stared at the wall beyond Gemma's shoulder for a moment before he answered. "I didn't want word of the captured man getting around. I didn't think he'd survive an hour, let alone this long." "Captain, that's all the more reason for him to be brought to the infirmary right away. Sir, I can't ignore this breach of human rights." "Is it human?" "Yes, he is human and deserves the same treatment any prisoner would receive. I have taken custody of the prisoner and he's being treated by my staff. I've also ordered Lieutenant Darren and everyone that had contact with him or his fighter to report for examination. Sir, this is very dangerous. There's no telling what could have been unleashed on this ship. If he is carrying some sort of virus, then there could be an outbreak. I cannot do my job if you don't trust me in these most crucial situations." "Are you finished dressing me down, Doctor?" "Yes, sir." Captain Caruso nodded and stood up. Gemma stood. "Dr. Fiore, you aren't wrong, but I made the decision I felt was best for the situation. The POW is officially placed in your custody. I'll have a couple of Marines posted here for you." "Thank you, sir." The captain turned and left her office. Gemma collapsed into her chair. She opened a drawer and took out a small glass and a bottle. She poured a finger of the amber liquid into the glass and drank it down. The prisoner remained unconscious, though no sedatives had been administered. Gemma was cautious with the medications she prescribed for him, since they didn't know what effect the drugs may have on his changed physiology. The day after his transfer to the infirmary, Gemma sat in her office reading the results of his blood work and genetics test. According to the results, he was roughly 17 years old. His genetic results matched that of a family that had been relocated to an isolationist colony, Param Canis, 20 years ago. The family name was Riley, but his birth wasn't recorded since it came after their move to the colony. She connected a tablet to her computer and downloaded the reports to it. On her way out of her office, she stopped a nearby nurse. "I'm going to speak with the captain. I'll be back shortly." "Yes, doctor." When Gemma walked onto the bridge, Captain Caruso frowned at her from his seat. He sat near the rear of the bridge, and the rest of the crew stations were on descending steps below him. The view screen at the front of the bridge displayed the blackness of space with stars winking in the distance. "Dr. Fiore, what can I do for you?" "I'd like to speak with you in private, sir. I have something to report regarding the patient." He stood up, and his first officer stood to take his place. Gemma followed Captain Caruso through another door into his office. The room was big enough for a large steel desk and chair, 2 matching cushioned chairs in front of it, and a couch against the wall behind the desk. Vid screens hung on the walls to the left and right of the desk. Everything in the room was black and chrome. The captain took his seat behind the desk. "Sit, doctor. What's so urgent?" Gemma slid the tablet across the desktop. "The prisoner is a 17-year-old colonist. The DNA tests place him as a member of a family that settled Param Canis 20 years ago. Sir, there's a 98% accuracy with these tests. Was there another colony attacked? Captain Caruso scanned the information on the tablet. He slid it back across the desk to her. Yes, Doctor. There have been a total of 12 colonies attacked, though we weren't aware of some of them until well after they had occurred. Thanks to the policies of those people, we had no patrols in their space. That's the real reason we were patrolling near Mondo Doro. We knew and did nothing to prevent it or even to warn them? Doctor, those people made it perfectly clear that they did not want our protection. We were honoring their wishes. But they never expected this. They had no chance at all. We let entire families die. And now, somehow, they're being turned into soldiers, Captain. Captain Caruso rubbed his forehead. This is new information, Doctor. Please write a full report on your findings regarding the POW and send it to me right away. Command will need to know what you've discovered. Yes, sir. She stood up. Sir, this could mean that there are more survivors from the colonies. As part of the enemy forces now, yes. Do you have a way to stop them from attacking? He paused to allow her a chance to answer. No, there is no choice but to continue our defense. Let me know if you learn anything new about the prisoner. You're dismissed, Doctor. When Gemma returned to the infirmary, she was surprised to find Lieutenant Darren outside of her office. Lieutenant, you can see anyone for your workup. Yes, Doctor, that's done and no issues found. I've been working on the mask from the POW's helmet. I think I know why your patient isn't waking up. Come into my office. They went inside and she leaned against the desk. What have you found? The connections to his forehead go to antennas. They're receivers. I was also able to activate some of the electronics and analyze their functions. From what we can tell so far, the connections in the mask allow the soldier to be controlled. It looks like commands are received through the antennas and fed into his brain directly. That's probably why they opened the skull, to add the electronics. It's sophisticated stuff. So he's unconscious because he hasn't been receiving orders. They cut him off. Well, the systems in the fighter were a direct line to those orders. The communication came to the fighter and then to his implants. Separating him from the ship and his helmet separates him from the network. We're still working out some of the details, but that's the gist of it. Thank you, Lieutenant. That's very helpful. Our next step is to find out if we can remove the implants. Good luck with that, Doctor. That's outside of my expertise, but let me know if I can help with any of the tech. I will do that. Thank you for sharing this promptly. Do we have any idea who he is yet? Where he comes from? Actually, yes. He's a 17-year-old colonist. So they did this a couple of days after Mondo Doro? No. He's actually from another colony, Param Canis. I don't get it. How are we fighting colonists? I want those answers too. I think Command might know more than they're sharing. That doesn't surprise you, does it? It really does surprise me. I would have expected better from our leaders. Lieutenant Darren let out a laugh that sounded half like a cough. Well then, I should get back to my duties. Good luck with your patient, Doctor.